And welcome back to Second Take, where we talk about reclaiming your health, taking back your power, and rewriting your story. So, I wanted to come in today to wrap up this whole series with just a couple of other tools and tricks that I've used during my health journey that I hope might bring you some added ability to increase your own power with your own health and to turn around your own health journey. So the first of those tools is actually hugely important, and I never realized it was important at all. I've done a ton of reading on health and different ways to reclaim our health, fix our health challenges, and doing that naturally has always been important to me. I've never wanted, obviously, as you've seen through this series, to really be somebody who had to rely on a bunch of different medications in order to have some semblance of health. So, as I was doing that research and reading, I came across a book that I thought was kind of bizarre at first. It just sounded too simple, and I thought there's no way that this is actually valid. The book is called Earthing. It's by Clinton Ober. If you haven't seen this book or read it, it is really interesting. So if you're a health nerd like I am and you enjoy reading things like that, it is a phenomenal book. But the book recognized what is one of the simplest things that I think I've ever heard that has actually caused some of the most drastic changes in my own health that I've ever experienced. And that is the practice of earthing or grounding. So if you haven't heard about that, what is it? It's just putting your feet on the earth or your butt on the earth if you want to sit on the ground, or touching a tree. It's anything that gets our body, our physical skin in contact with the earth. The reason that's important is because there's actually an exchange of electrons that goes on between us and the earth that actually does have a lot to do with repairing our inflammation, with decreasing our stress levels, and with increasing the overall health of our body. So there are really two things at the end of the day that are kind of the overarching themes with regard to our health, and that's proper nutrition and proper charge. So the nutrition is determined by those things that we discussed in earlier videos: the clean water, the clean food, decreasing the toxins. Those things are important so that your body has the building blocks that it needs to be healthy. The other piece of it is charge. Where do we get that charge from? We get that charge through contact with the earth, breathing correctly, which we'll discuss here in a minute, and also making sure that we're connecting with nature, connecting with the earth. So it's interesting if you think about back a long time ago, we always had our feet on the earth, right? And then somewhere along the way, somebody decided that shoes were a good idea, and we started wearing shoes all the time. And most of us now, especially as adults, I would hazard a guess that most of us don't have our feet on the earth ever. At least I, for one, was typically in shoes at all times, especially during the winter. I was always in shoes. And though I love to walk barefoot on the beach, I got to do that once every few years when I was on vacation somewhere. So walking with shoes on the ground, which have a rubber sole that is insulating you from the earth and stopping you from that electron transfer between you and the earth, is really something that I had no understanding as to how important that was to our health. So that's a really simple thing that you can do. Some people say 20 minutes, 30 minutes a day. I know I, for one, I don't have that kind of time to just go outside and stand there for 30 minutes or so. What I do is go out with my cup of coffee in the morning, and I'll stand there and look at the sun as it's rising and have my feet on the grass. It's that easy. I might stand there for 5 minutes. If it's cold, it might only be a couple of minutes. There's no real time period that I am on the earth, but it is something that I try to do every single day. And it really does help overall decrease of inflammation and just your feeling of being alive, your ability to have a better outlook, which right now I think is hugely important in our world. So if you haven't done this yet, I really encourage you to give it a shot. It sounds so simple, but the book itself even has a foreword by a doctor by the name of Stephen Sinatra, who's an MD. He's a cardiothoracic surgeon. And he thought this whole thing at the beginning was complete and utter nonsense. And then he started doing some research after he did it himself and found it working for him. He also did some research on this grounding and found all the science behind how it actually works. And it really is something that can have a palpable effect on your health. If you're in an area where it's just not possible, or you're somebody who isn't, it's not physically safe for you to get outside and have your feet in the ground, then you can have an earthing mat, or an earthing sheets they even have now. There's a site called earthing.com. That is the site from Clinton Ober. There's a bunch of other products now that you can get through Amazon and other places, but I'm always a little cautious about getting products from people that I don't necessarily know or know anything about. So the original products are through earthing.com. You can get sheets for your bed so that you're lying in a grounded position throughout the entire time that you're sleeping. You can get grounding mats to put your feet on while you're at a computer. That's what my feet are on one now. If you're sitting in front of a computer, you're soaking up electromagnetic frequencies from Wi-Fi or from the computer itself. So having your feet on a grounding mat that is properly grounded in a grounded outlet can actually help discharge the negative health effects that you're getting from sitting in front of the computer all day. So hugely helpful. I've noticed a total decrease in my own inflammation since I started doing this. So that's definitely something I'd encourage you to try. The next little tool and trick for the toolkit is breath work. And if that's something you're not doing, again, hugely helpful and also free. So definitely something that I would encourage you to try and see how it works for you. For anyone that has any level of anxiety or depression whatsoever, and especially if you get anxiety due to situational anxiety, where you'll feel it coming up all of a sudden, one of these breathing techniques can just stop that anxiety in its tracks and really stop you from suffering the ill effects of those panic attacks or that anxiety. And that's a 4-7-8 breath. So if you haven't heard of that before, it is literally 4-7-8. That's all you have to remember. It's to breathe in for a 4 count, hold your breath for a 7 count, and then breathe out for an 8 count. So I always, in my head, as I'm counting, I'm saying 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, and that just helps calm me, I think, itself as well, just because I'm counting that way. But it is a 4 count breath in, 7 count hold, out breath for 8. So 4-7-8, and that one is hugely helpful for any time that you're suffering anxiety. It's also really helpful when you're looking to try to go to sleep at night. I will do a 4-7-8 breath if I'm just having a hard time going to sleep in the evening. Sometimes I'm tired, but my brain still feels wired. So I'll do that 4-7-8, and it's very calming. And then the next thing you know, I'm asleep. So encourage you to give that one a try. The other favorite of mine is called a 4x4, and or a box breath. You'll hear that as well. Also hugely centering for anyone who deals with anxiety or depression, or just wants to be better centered and have more even energy, even keel throughout the day. That 4x4 breath can be really helpful in stressful situations. It's actually something they teach to our military. I learned that somewhere along the line. So 4x4 is to breathe in for a 4 count, hold for 4, breathe out for a 4 count, and hold again for 4. So it's literally 4 all the way around like a box. In, hold, out, hold. And again, hugely helpful. So if you haven't tried either of those, I would really recommend that. There's all sorts of different things that you can do with breath work. Anybody who's familiar with yoga or the Wim Hof style of breathing, there's all sorts of things that you can get into in that regard. To be honest, I've never tried anything else. Those two work so well for me that's what I typically will use. Anytime that I'm stressed out, anytime that I've got a lot going on and I just need to be able to focus. If I ever did get anxiety, I would use that. I don't have that anymore, thankfully. But if I did, I sure would use it. And I do use it to sleep if I need to. So those are the two that I really like for breath work. And then another part of the whole health journey, for me, this was a really hard one to learn. And it sounds so stupid, but it's to be able to play or have joy and laughter in our lives again. And I think for those of us that have had substantial health journeys, that have really been through the muck of it and really sitting in a place where pain might be a daily indicator of how poor your health has actually become. It's really hard to just be or to play or to find yourself in laughter. I think sometimes we get stuck. And I know for me, for years, I was stuck in this need to fix my issues, fix my problems, fix what was going on with my health. And yet at the same time, I had all these other concerns and all these other things going on between my kids and my job and just all of it. It's a lot. And now you add to it all the shit that's going on in the world. And it is shit. There's a lot of it. And it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on or who you tend to listen to throughout the day, whatever it is, the world's kind of crazy right now. If we allow ourselves to just sit in that craziness, then it can become a spiral and it can really start to affect our overall outlook, our overall vibration, our overall energy level. And that just adversely affects our health even further because the body does truly follow the mind. So, for those of you who haven't found yourself very often in joy or laughter or think, well, what the hell is there to be joyful about? It's the little things. You can find the little moments, whether it's playing with a child or a pet, whether it's watching a funny movie, whether it is reading a book or doing something else that you enjoy. Whatever it is, just find those little moments throughout your day that you can truly just be. And so a little side jaunt here. When I first started this journey in earnest, as far as my natural health journey was concerned, after I had done all of the clean water, the clean food, but I still wasn't really doing well. The first person I worked with as far as a practitioner was concerned, outside of the medical practitioners that I had previously seen, was my daughter. And she had started working in Reiki and natural healing and energy healing. And she was working with a friend of hers, and the two of them asked me to be one of their beta clients. I was all too happy to do that. And we started working on what at that time was my hypothyroid. I had a fairly significant thyroid issue, and it was something I dealt with for years. And I was looking forward to getting off the medication if it was at all possible. And during one of those initial early sessions, my daughter asked me what I would do if I could just be. And I thought, what the hell does that even mean? I can't just be. I've got a list a mile long of shit that needs to get done today. I don't have time to just be. What are you talking about? And she said, what would you do if you could just be? If you didn't have to worry about the work and the chores and the this and the that, what would you do? And it actually kind of made me mad because I thought, this is not helpful. I don't have time to just be what I don't know what you're talking about. And that's how much I had lost who I was and what I really found to be helpful in my day. That ability to just zero in on myself and just be. I didn't even have a connection to myself anymore. So that was kind of another aspect to this journey. And if you are someone who, like me, was so rush, rush, rush all the time that you've lost yourself, then I encourage you to figure that out. Figure out what would you do if you could just be. Sometimes now I'll just be by sitting outside with a book and have my feet in the grass as I sit out and read. The dog will sit next to me. And even if it's only 15 minutes during my lunch hour, it's 15 minutes I got to just be. So try and figure that out for yourself, because that is hugely helpful as well as you're moving forward in your health journey. So we've talked about healthy water, food, decreasing toxins, eliminating as many as you can from your day-to-day. We've talked now about grounding, different breathwork techniques, playing or just being. And there's one last thing that's really, really important, and that's meditation. So for those of you who think right off the bat, I don't have time for that, or I can't meditate, I've heard that a lot. I used to say it myself. I can't meditate. My mind won't allow me to just meditate and do nothing. I can't do that, or I don't have time for that. I had all of the excuses. When I finally started meditating in earnest, it was only for 5 minutes because that's all I could do. I had a busy morning, and 5 minutes was all I could allow myself to just sit and meditate. And for a while, that was not every day. It was kind of hit or miss. It depended. Sometimes I would remember, sometimes I wouldn't. And it was kind of, whatever. I got to get on with my day. But when things really started to change for me on a level that is almost otherworldly was when I started making meditation a true part of my everyday. So there's a timer, an app out there called Insight Timer, and it's free. Insight Timer has tons of guided meditations, as well as breath work, as well as unguided, just musical score for you to meditate to. It's got all sorts of things on there, and it's free, like I said. So I started initially moving to a little bit longer meditations on days that I could by using Insight Timer. And I would find a meditation on there that was maybe a 10-minute meditation, or on a weekend, maybe a 15-minute meditation. And I would do those. And I started to notice something happening pretty quickly once I made this a more frequent practice. I started to look forward to it. I started to look forward to the time that I was allowing myself to just sit in meditation. And at first it was that simple. I would just sit in meditation. I would listen to the app. It was usually guided meditations that I was listening to. And at first that's all it was. Just a guided meditation, but it was allowing me space in my morning to really start to come alive in a different way. And the most fascinating thing happened not too long after I started making this a daily practice, because eventually I did. I started recognizing that I was looking forward to it and that I felt a little bit stressed out if I didn't meditate. So I started to really make a conscious effort to make this a part of my every morning. And once I did, that's when things really started to change, not only in my life, but also in my health. So there are so many ways when I look back now that I recognize that my life and the entirety of my life was preparing me for what I'm doing now, was preparing me for not only a career, but a purpose in helping other people recover their health, and to do it in such a way that it's natural. It's not effortless. It can be difficult, but it's easy. At the end of the day, it's fairly simple. We haven't talked about anything that is earth-shattering. We haven't talked about anything that is really difficult. It might be difficult in the moment to not eat a certain food, or difficult to try and locate the information you need to make sure you have clean water for yourself. But at the end of the day, these are fairly easy things. Illness is hard. These things aren't difficult. But when I started to meditate daily and understand that really my whole life had been preparing me for what I get to do now, that's when the pieces really started to fall together. And I started to realize that though I considered myself to be a non-religious person from the time that I was young, and though I really believed that well, religion wasn't something I ever thought about, period, but I did believe that I wasn't sure what was out there, if anything. I started to understand through meditation that throughout my entire life, it's been one example after another that I wasn't alone. I wasn't by myself. There was always a power greater than me that was pulling me along every step of the way. And I recognized in those meditations, it started to come together in my mind that what I had considered to always be difficulties in my own life, these health challenges that I had, the fact that I had my earliest diagnosis of a disease was in my early 20s, and all of the challenges that came along with that, they were all for a reason, because I learned in the long run how to recover and reclaim my own health, how to take my own power back from the MDs and the other doctors out there who I thought knew everything and ultimately came to find out didn't know any more than me. I learned how to take back my own power and to rewrite my story. And the reason that all of that happened is that I can help you do the same thing. It might sound cliche or sound trite, but to me, it's a purpose, and it comes from a power that's greater than me. So as I look back now and I look back over some of those stories that I told you through earlier episodes about being a young mom and not knowing how I was going to feed my kids, but yet this kind-hearted psychologist that I was seeing enabled me to be able to feed my children, or the butterfly in the window when my son was in the hospital and I felt like I was truly alone. And that butterfly sat there on that fifth story window to prove to me that I was not alone. The resources that came together when I became a new supervisor and didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I was guided one after the other to the right resources. The house that I rented that was full of mold, and I had no idea where I was going to go with these two young kids in tow. But yet, the neighbor who pulls up happens to be a realtor. And not only does she have an apartment for us, but then she's able to help us buy the house across the street. The cardiac event that, looking back, could have been so much worse. I was so lucky. It was an eye opener. The hysterectomy that happened later, both the initial partial hysterectomy and then later a full hysterectomy that happened because I didn't recognize all the signs and symptoms my body had given me earlier. But all of these things happened in a way that I was led one step after another to the next step. And looking back now, I can always see that there was always a next step. There was always something greater than me that was putting that next step in front of me. And all I had to do was to have a little bit of faith, to trust that that next step was going to be the best next step, that next step was going to carry me forward in this journey in a way that I might not yet understand, but that I knew in my heart, in my core, that it was going to turn out okay and that I was going to be fine. There was always that faith that I was going to be fine. And now looking back, at the ripe old age of 52, I can look back at all those things that occurred in my life, one after the other, and recognize the higher power that was throughout all of it. And now that I recognize that, I can also understand why I'm here, because it sure as hell wasn't for a 27-year career in insurance that I really didn't enjoy. I used to always think my life was all about my kids. That was it. Being a mother was the most important role I've ever had, and it was the role that I enjoyed the most out of anything in my life. But at the end of the day, my kids grew up and they moved away. And now what? That empty nest syndrome is real. That was a thing, and that was brutally hard for me to go through because I didn't know who I was without being a mom. I didn't know who I was without a daily need of a young child. And now, through this journey and through everything that I've gone through, and specifically what was given to me in meditation, I now understand that there was a higher power throughout all of it, that I was just guided every step of the way to be where I am today so that I can bring you all of this information that I've brought you here in this series. So though it seems simple, and though you may think to yourself, well, I've got real issues, I've got these 10 diagnoses, and these little tips and tricks that she's told me are sure as hell not going to resolve this for me. I ask you to take a step back and to really think about what if it is that easy? What if it is that simple? And it's really only putting that next step forward because the path has been laid out. You may find that, as I did, these simple steps built one upon the next, and I started to feel better and better and better with just these small, different changes. And if you do, then how encouraging is that going to be? Because each small step forward, you start to feel better, and that momentum builds one step upon the next, upon the next. The momentum starts building to the point where you recognize you can do this. You can take your health back. You can reclaim your health and rewrite your story with a different ending. You don't have to be stuck going to the doctor all the time and having a list of medications a mile long. You don't have to be in that boat. You can take your power back. So after all of this, these tips, tricks, etc., if you still find, if you do all these things and you find you're still having problems, then give me a call because I have a free consultation. That free consultation, I can discuss with you a couple of other tricks that I have up my sleeve. One of them involves bioenergetic healing. And if you found this series because I met you at a holistic health fair, then you've already seen the bioenergetic tool that I'm using to assist. If you haven't and you are coming to me new on YouTube, then feel free to check out my website. That information will be linked below. And my website will be able to guide you to the bioenergetic healing tool that I use for those people who need a little bit more intensive care. I did. And that tool allowed me to rectify the remaining health issues that I have and get me to a point where I was the healthiest that I've been since I was in my early 20s. So check that out if you're so inclined. Otherwise, I hope that these tips, tricks, and pointers really get you on your way to recognizing that you have the power to take your life back. It's really that easy. You just have to decide. You have to decide that's what you want, and you have to go for it. And you have to take that radical responsibility because that's really what it's about. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about your health challenges? Are you going to just go along to get along and do what the doctors tell you? Or are you going to take a different route and reclaim your health? I hope you do. I hope you take the chance to recognize that this actually could work for you as well. And whichever way you go, I wish you the best. I absolutely wish you nothing but health and happiness in the future. And I hope that you recognize how powerful you really are. If you take a chance on that meditation, you might find that there's something there for you that you haven't yet discovered. That certainly was what it was for me. And I recognized not only was this whole journey about reclaiming my health, it was about helping you reclaim yours. So with that, I will let it rest. I wish you all the best in the future to you and your good health. Bye-bye.